Noon sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of the Marble Fox, an upscale restaurant off Fifth Avenue. It landed softly on white tablecloths and silver cutlery, where waiters moved like shadows. Precise and silent, at a corner table sat Ethan Walker, a man whose name could move markets. The platinum watch on his wrist gleamed every time he scrolled his phone. He didn't glance up when a young waitress approached with her notepad in hand. "Good afternoon, sir. May I take your order?" Ethan's voice came out flat, distracted. "Yeah, I'll have the financial advice, with a side of sparkling water. You serve that here." A few customers at nearby tables chuckled. The joke wasn't funny, but people always laughed around power. Aisha Johnson, 26, froze for half a second. 8 hours on her feet, 2 more to go, and now this. She took a breath and smiled politely. "I'm sorry, sir. That's not on our menu." Her tone was calm, professional, but her eyes didn't flinch. Behind that stillness was exhaustion, years of having to smile at men who looked through her. Never at her dot that made Ethan look up. He had expected embarrassment, maybe nervousness. Not this quiet confidence looking straight back at him. "It was a joke," he said, smirking. "But since you mentioned it, where would you invest $1 million? Aisha hesitated, then placed her tray down. "Do you want the truth or another joke?" "Truth," he said. "Entertain me." The restaurant seemed to hush. Aisha spoke clearly, her voice low but sure. 40% into renewable energy funds in developing nations, Africa, Southeast Asia, where infrastructure is growing faster than regulations. 30% into undervalued mid-cap stocks, currently recovering from market overreaction. 20% in municipal bonds for tax protection. 10% liquid, for when panic makes the rich sell cheap. Ethan stopped tapping his phone. "That's oddly specific. You memorized that from a podcast?" "No, sir," she said softly. "Just my opinion. Now, what would you like for lunch?" For the first time in hours, Ethan put his phone away. "Sit down," he said. "I can't. I'm working. I'll handle your boss," he replied, waving over the manager. Pierre, the French Mactor D, appeared instantly. "Of course, Mr. Walker. Please, take your time." Aisha sat, rigid, hands folded neatly in her lap. "What did you study?" Ethan asked. "Finance." "Where?" "Howard University." He tilted his head, smirking. "That's an HBCU, right? Historically black college?" "Yes, sir." Her eyes didn't waver. "Though last I checked, prophets don't ask for a skin color before they arrive." That silenced him. For the first time, Ethan Walker, billionaire, investor, self-made genius, didn't have a comeback. Then, unexpectedly, he chuckled. "Fair enough," he said. "Touche." Aisha stood, smoothing her apron. "If you'll excuse me, I have other tables." She turned, walking away with the calm poise of someone who'd already won the argument. The light from the window hit her skin like brushed bronze. Ethan watched her leave, unsettled. His lunch arrived, untouched. Before leaving, he signed the check, for dollars. $300 for a steak he didn't eat, and slipped something extra into the leather bill folder. "A personal note, the best financial advice I've ever received. Consider this your consulting fee." Inside was a check for $10,000. That night, in a small apartment in the Bronx, Aisha sat by a flickering desk lamp, staring at the envelope. $10,000, the exact amount she needed for her next semester of night classes. In her MBA program. Her phone buzzed with a new email. "We regret to inform you that your scholarship application has been denied." She exhaled shakily, staring at the message. The ceiling fan hummed. Outside, a train rumbled in the distance. $10,000. Enough for tuition, maybe even rent. But taking it felt like a bargain she couldn't afford. One more favor from a man who thought she was beneath him. She stared at the handwritten number on the envelope again, and the phone number scrawled underneath. Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she pressed call. To rings. Then a smooth male voice, surprised but amused. "That was faster than I expected." Aisha steadied her breath. "I'd like to hear about that proposition you mentioned." "Excellent," Ethan said. His tone was low, confident, as if he'd been waiting. "Tomorrow, 3 o'clock, Walker Capital, 80th floor, The line clicked off in the dim light. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark phone screen. The tired eyes of a woman who had learned how to survive in a world built to overlook her. She didn't know it yet, but that call would drag her into a world of secrets, power, and privilege, a game where intellect and skin color could both become weapons. And for the first time in her life, Aisha Johnson was about to play on their field. Ethan Walker couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his penthouse, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city that never stopped, the skyline flickering outside his floor-to-ceiling windows like a heartbeat of gold. His mind replayed the moment that Waitress, no, that woman, had looked him dead in the eye and dismantled his arrogance with nothing but calm intellect. He had met senators, economists, founders, but no one had ever spoken to him that way, without fear, without need, without trying to impress him. Her name, Aisha Johnson, was still in his head long after the taste of his wine had faded. He turned, stared at the ceiling, and finally picked up his phone. "Pull her file," he said when his assistant answered, half asleep. "Who, sir?" "The waitress at the Marble Fox, Aisha Johnson." There was hesitation on the other end. "Sir, that might be. Just do it." Quietly, Ethan hung up and sank deeper into the silence. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profits or acquisitions. He was thinking about a voice, calm, steady, defiant. By morning, his assistant had sent a dossier. He opened it over breakfast, coffee black, toast untouched. Aisha Johnson, 26, resident of Bronx, New York, previously attended Howard University, major in finance, dropped out 2 years before completion due to financial hardship, currently enrolled in night MBA program at CUNY. A small note followed, lives with younger sister, age 14, mother deceased, father unknown, works double shifts at the Marble Fox. Ethan closed the file slowly. For some reason, that last line, works double shifts, hit harder than it should. That afternoon, he showed up again at the Marble Fox, in the same seat, the same corner. When Aisha saw him, her steps faltered for a moment. She approached with that same composed politeness. "Back for more financial advice?" she asked. "Maybe," Ethan said, setting his phone aside this time. "Or maybe I'm back for someone who made me realize I've been surrounded by yes men too long." Aisha smiled faintly. "That sounds like a personal problem, not a financial one." He chuckled. "Fair, but what if I wanted to make it your problem, professionally?" "I'm not for sale, Mr. Walker." He reached into his jacket, placed an envelope on the table. 10,000 says you at least hear me out." Her jaw tightened. "You think everything has a price?" "No," Ethan said quietly. "But opportunity usually does." Aisha didn't touch the envelope. "Some opportunities come wrapped like traps." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Your scholarship got denied last night, didn't it?" She froze. Her breath caught, just enough for him to know he was right. "How did you?" "I have my ways," he said simply. "The offer stands, tomorrow, 3 p.m. Walker Capital." He stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "If you decide you'd rather sit at the table than serve it." That night, Aisha sat by her small window, watching the orange glow of streetlights ripple across wet pavement. Her sister, Maya, was asleep in the next room, soft music still playing from her cheap earbuds. The envelope lay untouched on the desk. $10,000, clean, crisp, and terrifying. She'd worked so hard to stay invisible these past 3 years, to keep her head down, to never let anyone dig too deep. And now the most powerful man on Wall Street wanted to know her name. Her phone buzzed with a new text, "Rent due tomorrow. You have your half?" Aisha sighed, rubbing her temples. Her life had become a cycle of exhaustion, pay rent, study, serve, repeat. No breaks, no breathing room. Just survival. She picked up the envelope again. There was no denying what that money could do. Tuition, rent, maybe even a few months of peace. But accepting it meant stepping back into a world she'd sworn to avoid. A world where she'd once lost everything. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of flames, papers burning, her name on headlines, men in suits shaking hands over her ruin. And then came morning. At 2:55 p.m., she stood in front of the mirror in the lobby of Walker Capital Tower, her reflection framed by glass and steel. She wore the only formal outfit she owned, a white blouse, black skirt, and nerves wrapped tight beneath her skin. The receptionist barely looked at her. "May I help you?" "Appointment. 3 o'clock. Mr. Walker." The woman blinked, checked the screen, then raised an eyebrow. "You're on his calendar." Aisha nodded. The receptionist's tone softened. 81st floor, ma'am. Elevator to your right." As the doors closed, Aisha's stomach tightened. Each floor that passed, 60, 70, 75, felt like leaving behind the safety of the small, invisible life she'd built. When the elevator chimed, Ethan was already waiting by the glass wall, the city sprawling behind him like a map of power. "You came," he said, smiling. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Why change your mind?" Aisha's answer was quiet. "Because I'm tired of watching people like you assume I don't belong in your world." Ethan studied her. There was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion, the kind that came from fighting battles no one else saw. He gestured to a chair. "Then let's fix that." He handed her a tablet displaying data from several companies. "Tell me which one you'd invest in." Aisha scanned the numbers, scrolling faster and faster, her brow furrowing. "This one," she said finally, tapping a line on the screen. Ethan frowned. "Why?" "My team's recommending it as our top choice." "Then your team's about to lose you $100 million. She replied. Ethan blinked. "Explain." Aisha turned the tablet, showing him cross-reference data. "Their energy reports are falsified. Production claims don't match their fuel consumption. They're lying, and you're buying it." Ethan stared at her, speechless. "You're sure?" 100%. "The numbers are too clean. Real growth has noise, variance. This is staged." He leaned forward, a slow grin spreading across his face, the kind of grin that meant he'd just found something worth more than money. "You just saved me a fortune," he said, "and probably embarrassed my entire analytics division." She shrugged. "They should thank me." Ethan laughed softly. "You know what, Ms. Johnson? I think you might be the smartest person I've met in years." Aisha stood, collecting her bag. "If you're done testing me, I have work at 5. "Wait," he said. "Don't go back there. I want to hire you officially." She froze. "Doing what?" "Consulting, discreetly, your own terms. I'll pay 7 figures if you stay off the floor, and on my payroll." Her pulse quickened. It was the offer of a lifetime, everything she'd once dreamed of, and everything she'd learned to fear. "I can't," she said finally. "Why not?" "Because I like keeping my life simple and invisible." Ethan took a step closer, eyes searching hers. "Then let me make you visible, Aisha. You've hidden long enough." She turned toward the elevator without replying. When the doors slid shut, he stood there staring at his reflection in the glass, at the faint smile she'd left behind in the air. And as she descended, Aisha's heart pounded with a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Not hope, not fear. Something far more dangerous, curiosity. She had stepped into his world, and she already knew how easily that world could burn. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a corridor lined with glass, steel, and silence. Aisha Johnson stepped out, heels clicking against the polished marble floor of Walker Capital's headquarters. A world of money and mirrors where everything gleamed, except sincerity. She took a slow breath. The air here felt different, colder, thinner, as if even oxygen had to earn its way in. A tall man in a tailored navy suit approached, his stride precise, his expression guarded. "Ms. Johnson?" "Yes, I'm David Mercer, Mr. Walker's chief of staff." His tone carried a weight that was almost a warning. "He's expecting you." Mercer led her down a hallway that overlooked the skyline of Manhattan. Analysts sat in neat rows, their screens alive with flashing numbers. No one looked up. It was as if human presence here existed only to serve algorithms. At the far end stood a glass office, floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretching endlessly behind the man who owned half of it. Ethan Walker looked up as she entered, and for a fleeting moment, that sharp, calculating expression softened. "Aisha," he said, standing. "Welcome to the top." She offered a polite smile. "It's quite the view." "Perspective," he replied, gesturing for her to sit. "You see things differently from up here. Details disappear. Patterns emerge." She sat, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "And which am I here to be? a detail, or a pattern? Ethan laughed quietly. Maybe both. For a few moments, neither spoke. The hum of the city filled the silence. Then Ethan turned a sleek tablet toward her. "These," he said, "are current portfolio opportunities. I want your opinion, off the record." Aisha scanned the screen. A dozen companies. Renewable energy startups, tech mergers, overseas funds. She flipped through quickly, her brow furrowing as her eyes caught on one. "This one," she said. "The data's too smooth. Growth curves like that don't exist outside fairy tales." "Interesting," Ethan murmured. "You're the second person to say that." "Who was the first?" "Me." Their eyes met, a flicker of understanding passing between two minds used to being the smartest. "In any room. Show me the reports," she said. Ethan smiled slightly, sliding the keyboard toward her. "Be my guest for the next 20 minutes." Aisha worked in silence, fingers moving across the screen like a pianist. She opened data sets, cross-referenced energy consumption, supply chain reports, and export permits. The numbers began to rearrange in her mind like puzzle pieces snapping into place. Finally, she stopped. "There." Ethan leaned forward. "What am I looking at?" "A phantom company," she said. "Fake production plants in Kenya and South Korea. They exist only on paper. The reported energy usage doesn't match the claimed manufacturing output. They'd need at least 40% more fuel consumption than they're reporting." Ethan frowned, checking the graphs. How the hell did no one see this? "Because they weren't looking for what didn't exist," she replied softly. "Fraud hides best where arrogance looks least." He sat back, studying her, not the screen, not the data, but her. "You just saved me from $100 million mistake," he said quietly. Aisha shrugged. "Then I guess you owe me lunch." Ethan laughed, the sound low and genuine. "Something tells me you're not easily bought." "Not anymore." The words slipped out before she could stop them. For a second, her eyes clouded, a shadow of something older, heavier. Ethan noticed. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "Just experience." "Experience has names," he countered. "What's yours?" She stood, reaching for her bag. "I'm not here to talk about me, Mr. Walker." "Ethan," he corrected. "Mr. Walker," she repeated firmly. "And I really do have to get to work." Ethan stood too. "Wait, don't go back there. You don't belong serving tables. That's not your decision. I'm offering you a job. A real one. Private consultancy. You set your terms, pay, schedule everything. Just work for me." She blinked, unsure if he was serious. "Why me?" "Because I have a dozen Ivy League analysts who missed what you spotted in 10 minutes. You have something they don't. And what's that?" "Instinct," he said simply. "Real-world perspective. Clarity." Aisha's chest tightened. She'd heard those words before, from another man in another tower. Years ago, right before her world collapsed. She shook her head. "You don't know me. Then let me," he said quietly for a long moment. Silence stretched between them, the city murmuring beneath their feet. Then she turned toward the door. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," Ethan called after her. The world doesn't wait for brilliance. When the elevator doors closed behind her, Aisha exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Outside, the autumn air bit against her skin, the roar of Manhattan returning like a familiar friend. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Background check initiated. Priority level, urgent. She froze. The contact name flashed briefly before the screen dimmed. David Mercer. So, Ethan's right-hand man had already started digging. Aisha looked up at the towering building she'd just left. Its mirrored windows glinted under the gray sky, reflecting the world she'd tried so hard to stay away from. She knew this pattern. This was how it always began: admiration, curiosity, and then suspicion. "Careful, Aisha," she whispered to herself. "Curiosity kills more than cats." That night, she sat at her small kitchen table, textbooks open, but her mind elsewhere. Maya was at the counter, doing homework. "You look worried," her sister said without looking up. Aisha smiled faintly. "Just tired." "From the restaurant?" A pause. "From everything." Maya sighed. "You always say that. You could have had that scholarship, right? Why didn't they pick you?" Aisha stared at the flickering light above them. "Because sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you work, baby. The world still picks its favorites." Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Ethan. Offer still stands. Think about what you could do if no one underestimated you again. She stared at the words. In them, she heard both promise and danger, power and pity, and behind them, something else. An opening. She closed her books. I'm going for a walk, she told Maya. The air outside was sharp, filled with the scent of rain and concrete. Streetlights reflected off puddles like fragments of a life she'd once lived. Sharp suits, glass offices, betrayal. A car rolled to a stop beside her. The tinted window lowered just enough for a familiar voice to drift out. I didn't think you'd answer so soon, Ethan said. Aisha stepped closer, the wind brushing strands of hair across her face. You said your offer was still open. It is. Then I'm listening. He nodded, unlocking the passenger door. Get in, let's talk. And as she slid into the car, she knew this was the moment her two worlds would collide. The world she'd run from, and the one she was stepping back into. One built on privilege, the other on survival. Only this time, she wasn't the one being played. The next 2 weeks at Walker Capital passed like a blur of numbers. Long nights and unease. By day, Aisha Johnson worked quietly from a sleek corner desk Ethan had arranged for her. Temporary, he'd said, though it looked anything but. By night, she returned to her cramped apartment in the Bronx, cooking dinner for Maya, pretending everything was normal. But normal was gone. The higher she climbed into Ethan's world, the more she felt the ground shifting under her feet. The men in suits who passed her in the hallways would glance at her name tag, then at her skin, and then look away, polite, professional, cold. She wasn't blind to the way some whispered when she walked past. To them, she wasn't a rising analyst. She was an anomaly, the wrong color, the wrong past, the wrong woman in the wrong place. And yet, she delivered. She caught to major inconsistencies in multi-million-dollar acquisitions, saving the company from disaster. Even Ethan's most skeptical investors had started asking about the woman behind the reports. But there was one man who didn't ask. He only watched. David Mercer, Ethan's chief of staff, had made a career out of suspicion, and Aisha's quiet precision unnerved him. Late one evening, as most of the floor lights dimmed, Mercer stood at his desk, staring at a file spread across 3 screens. He zoomed in on an old ID photo, grainy and half-faded. Then another, a DMV record from Maryland. He frowned. Same face, different name. Alana Carter. He typed faster, cross-referencing financial databases. There it was, a trail that ended abruptly 3 years ago. Employment history vanished, replaced by the digital void of someone who'd been erased. Mercer's lips pressed into a thin line. He picked up his phone. Ethan, we need to talk. Meanwhile, Aisha was still in Ethan's office, going over an emerging market report. The city lights below shimmered like a field of stars. You're still here, Ethan said, entering with 2 coffees. You know it's almost midnight. She smiled faintly. Numbers don't care what time it is, neither do billionaires, he replied, handing her a cup. She accepted it, careful not to let her fingers brush his. There was a tension between them now, unspoken, charged, hovering between business and something dangerously human. Ethan studied her for a moment. You're quiet tonight. Just tired. From work? From being watched? He tilted his head. Watched? Every time I walk past your analysts, I feel their eyes on me, like they're waiting for me to make one mistake to prove I don't belong here. Ethan's jaw tightened. If anyone's giving you trouble, it's not trouble, she cut in gently. It's just the world reminding me where I come from. He hesitated, then said softly, maybe it's time to stop letting the world define you by that. Aisha looked up, her eyes steady. That's easy to say when the world was built for you. Her words hit harder than he expected. For once, Ethan had no reply. Before the silence could deepen, the door opened. Mercer stepped in, his expression taut. Sorry to interrupt, he said, though his tone carried no apology. It's urgent, Ethan frowned. Can it wait? No, sir. Aisha started gathering her things. I'll go. Ethan shook his head. Stay. Mercer's gaze flicked toward her. Actually, this concerns Ms. Johnson. She froze. Ethan's voice cooled instantly. Explain. Mercer moved closer, dropping a thin folder on the desk. I ran a deeper background check. The one your assistant sent barely scratched the surface. I didn't authorize that, Ethan said sharply. I know, Mercer replied. But when someone walks into this company with no verifiable history before 2021, I get curious. He opened the folder. Aisha's stomach dropped. There, staring back at her, was a photo she hadn't seen in years. Her old ID, long hair. Different name, Elena Carter. Mercer's voice was steady. Real name, Elena Carter. Former senior financial analyst at Blackridge Investments. 3 years ago, she was accused of insider trading in a case that cost investors millions. Disappeared before the SEC investigation concluded. The room went still. Even the hum of the city seemed to fade. Ethan's eyes were unreadable. Is this true? Aisha tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. I can explain. Mercer didn't stop. She's been living under a new identity, possibly with forged documentation. If this leaks, Walker Capital's credibility. Enough, Ethan snapped. The command in his voice cut through the air. Mercer blinked. Sir, I said enough. Ethan turned toward Aisha. Is what he said true? She met his gaze. The exhaustion, the fear, the years of running, all of it crashed down on her shoulders. Yes, Mercer let out a low whistle. So it's true. She's a fugitive. No, Aisha said firmly, voice trembling but steadying. I'm not running from justice. I'm running from lies. Ethan raised a hand. Mercer, give us the room. Mercer hesitated. Sir, that's an order. After a long, tense pause, Mercer left, closing the glass door behind him. The moment it shut, Aisha sank into the chair, pressing her palms together. I knew this would happen. Ethan didn't speak. He just watched her, not with anger, but with something closer to understanding. Tell me, he said quietly. Who are you, really? Aisha looked up. For the first time, the wall she'd built around herself cracked. My name is Elena Carter, she whispered. I worked at Blackridge Investments until the day they decided I was more useful as a scapegoat than as an employee. Ethan frowned. Scapegoat. I found irregularities in one of our accounts. Millions moving through offshore firms tied to the founder's family. When I confronted my boss and my fiancée, they smiled, said they'd handle it. Her voice broke slightly. The next morning, the SEC raided us. All the evidence pointed to me. My signature, my credentials. They erased everything else. Ethan leaned back slowly, connecting dots in his mind. And you disappeared. I didn't have a choice, she said. I was a black woman accused of defrauding a white-run firm worth billions. No one wanted to hear my side. He rubbed his chin, silent. You could have fought, he said at last. With what lawyer? With what money? She replied bitterly. They froze my accounts, destroyed my name, turned me into a headline. I was guilty before I even spoke. Ethan's eyes softened. You should have told me. Would you have believed me? He hesitated. I do now. She laughed quietly, shaking her head. Don't make promises like that. The moment this leaks, your board will turn on you. Mercer already has ammunition. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then let them come for me. I've dealt with worse. Aisha looked up sharply. You don't understand who you're dealing with. The Ridge family doesn't lose. They buy their way out of justice. They bury people like me. He studied her for a long moment, then said calmly, Then we'll dig them back up. Her breath caught. What? You said they erased you. So we'll erase their cover-up. If they framed you once, there's a pattern. They've done it before. She stared at him, disbelief flickering across her face. You'd risk your company, your name, for me? Ethan's reply was simple, steady. I've spent years making money off other people's lies. Maybe it's time I put some of it to good use. The glass walls around them reflected the skyline. Two silhouettes facing each other, equal for the first time. But outside that office, Mercer was already on his phone, his voice low and deliberate. Yes, he murmured. It's confirmed. She's the one from the Blackridge case. No, Ethan doesn't know we've kept a copy of the file. He glanced through the glass, eyes narrowing. And he won't, not until it's too late. Rain tapped gently against the glass walls of Ethan's office the next morning, turning the skyline into a watercolor of grays and golds. Inside, Elena Carter, once Aisha Johnson, sat across from him, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. For hours, she had told him everything. The story she'd buried. The life she'd burned down to survive. Now, the silence between them felt heavier than any confession. 3 years earlier, Washington, D.C., the glass tower of Blackridge Investments glittered like a monument to greed. Back then, Elena was the rising star of the firm, the youngest analyst to ever make senior status. She'd worked herself raw to get there, late nights, extra reports, the kind of flawless precision that made her both admired and resented. But what made her unstoppable wasn't just brilliance, it was hunger. The hunger of someone who'd grown up hearing people like "you don't get here." And then there was Michael Ridge, heir to the empire. Handsome, privileged, with the kind of smile that came from knowing the world would always forgive him. He'd noticed her during a quarterly meeting. She'd corrected his numbers, gently, publicly, and instead of being humiliated, he'd been intrigued. Within months, he was bringing her coffee, inviting her to strategy dinners, then whispering promises she wanted to believe. "You're not like them," he'd told her once, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You actually see the world. Stay close to me, and I'll make sure they do too." It wasn't love, not at first. It was validation, safety, and for a while, it worked. She was given bigger accounts, more autonomy. Until the day she found the numbers. It started as an anomaly, one minor discrepancy in a set of quarterly reports. But as she followed the trail, the pattern grew darker. Offshore transfers to unregistered firms, shell accounts in the Caymans, and all of it tied back to a single signature, Jonathan Ridge, Michael's father. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Then she saw the fake non-profits listed under the company's community outreach branch, charities, that didn't exist, funneling millions through shell corporations. Her heart sank. She printed everything, highlighted every red flag, and went straight to Michael. He listened in silence, then smiled. "You've done incredible work," he said softly, "but you can't show this to anyone yet." "Why not?" she'd asked, confused. "Because you don't understand the whole picture." That was the first red flag she ignored. 2 days later, her system login was revoked. The next, her office access card stopped working. And on the third day, the SEC raided Blackridge. Ethan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "They framed you." "Yes," Elena said quietly. "The documents they handed over to the investigation all pointed to me. Emails sent from my address. Signatures digitally cloned. My name appeared on every illegal transfer. Overnight, I went from rising star to corporate criminal." "What about Michael?" "He disappeared for a week. When he came back, he told the investigators he'd noticed irregularities in my behavior." Her voice broke. "He said I'd been acting paranoid, that I'd accessed confidential files after hours. They painted me as an unstable employee trying to take down the company out of spite." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Jesus, the media ran with it," she continued. "Black woman accused in multi-million-dollar fraud scandal." That headline ran for months. My photo everywhere. No mention of who owned the company. Just me. She set the coffee cup down, fingers trembling slightly. "They froze my accounts, revoked my credentials, and within days, I couldn't even rent an apartment. So I disappeared, changed my name, cut my hair, started over." Ethan exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. "You were engaged to him, weren't you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I gave him everything. My loyalty, my silence, my faith that he'd do the right thing. And he gave you hell in return." Her laugh was bitter. "He gave me a reminder that some men don't destroy you because they have to. They do it because they can." A long pause. Ethan stood, walking to the window. The rain had turned into a steady drizzle, blurring the city below. "Why tell me all this now?" he asked. "Because it's already coming for me," Elena replied. "Mercer knows who I am. And once that file leaks, everything you've built will be dragged down with me." Ethan turned. "You think I care about the headlines? You should. You're a white billionaire running a firm built on reputation. I'm a black woman accused of stealing millions. That's all the world will see." He studied her, the calm defiance in her voice, the exhaustion beneath it. Then he said quietly, "Then we'll change what they see." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You said they left no trace of their crimes. But if they used you as their front, there's a digital trail, buried somewhere. Blackridge's records, maybe something they forgot to wipe." Elena shook her head. They destroyed everything. Then we find what they missed, Ethan said simply. Every liar leaves fingerprints. And I know people who specialize in recovering them. She stared at him. Why would you help me? Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Because I'm tired of watching men like them win. And maybe because I see something of myself in you. Someone who learned how to survive in a system designed to break them. Elena looked away. You don't know what survival looks like from where I stand. No, he admitted. But I can stand beside you while you fight. That night, she dreamed of her old life. The office parties, the laughter, Michael's hand around hers. The way he'd once said, "We'll change the world, you and I." When she woke, tears streaked her face. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hello, Elena. It's been a while. Did you really think you could hide forever? The sender's name made her blood run cold. Michael Ridge. The next morning, she walked into Ethan's office, eyes darker, posture straighter. He found me, she said simply. Ethan frowned. Who? Michael Ridge. She handed him the phone. He knows I'm back. Ethan's expression hardened. Then it's time we stop running. He opened a drawer and slid a folder toward her. Printed reports. Encrypted messages. Recovered data. What's this? She asked. A pattern, Ethan said. Your story wasn't the only one. 2 other analysts from Blackridge vanished after internal audits. One was transferred. The other committed suicide. Both had ties to the same fraudulent accounts. Elena's pulse quickened. You found this, not me. My cybersecurity chief. She's ex-NSA. She's been digging all night. Elena's eyes filled, not with fear, but with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, cautious, trembling, alive. Ethan met her gaze. We can expose them, Elena. But if we do this, there's no going back. She nodded. I burned my old life once. I can do it again. This time for the truth. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, echoing off glass and steel. And somewhere in an office across town, Michael Ridge stared at the same skyline, swirling a glass of scotch and smirking. She's back, he said to his father. And this time, she's got help. Jonathan Ridge didn't even look up. Then make sure she disappears again. The invitation arrived wrapped in silver, embossed, elegant, and poisonous. The Blackridge Foundation Gala celebrating a decade of integrity and innovation. Elena almost laughed when she read the tagline. Integrity, innovation. 2 words Jonathan Ridge had never earned in his life. Across from her, in Ethan's penthouse overlooking Manhattan, she laid the envelope flat on the table. He's taunting me, she said quietly. Ethan leaned back on the sofa, swirling a glass of whiskey. He's confident. Men like Ridge always think they're untouchable. He is untouchable, she replied. Every investigation that ever touched him vanished. Ethan smiled thinly. Then it's time we touch something he can't erase. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were blueprints, guest lists, and one line that made her heart skip. Server room, restricted access, sublevel 2. Their entire digital archive, Ethan said. Emails, transfers, donor files, offshore ledgers, everything. My contact in cybersecurity says Ridge still keeps his private correspondence offline. Old habits die hard. And you think we can get in? I think you can. Elena raised a brow. Why me? Because Michael Ridge will never suspect that the woman he buried would walk into his house, wearing a mask. 2 nights later, the world of Blackridge glittered under chandeliers and champagne. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Conservatory, a palace of glass and marble filled with people dressed like royalty and lying like politicians. Elena adjusted her mask in the mirror. Black lace, simple, elegant. Her hair was pinned back, her skin glowing beneath the soft light. She hardly recognized herself. Ethan appeared beside her, tuxedo sharp, presence magnetic. Ready. She took a slow breath. No, but I'm going anyway. They stepped into the ballroom together, greeted by flashes of cameras and the low hum of moneyed laughter. Strings played softly in the background, and waiters drifted through the crowd with trays of champagne. Across the room, Michael Ridge was holding court, still beautiful, still poisonous. His blonde hair was shorter now, his suit custom-tailored, his smile unchanged. He was laughing with a senator when his eyes found hers. The world stilled. For a split second, confusion flashed across his face. then recognition, and beneath it, disbelief. She didn't look away. She lifted her champagne flute in silent acknowledgement. While Ethan engaged donors and board members, Elena slipped quietly toward the back corridor. Her black dress shimmered under dim light, her heels silent against marble. Security guards stood at both ends of the hall. She pulled a small silver keycard from her clutch, courtesy of Ethan's contact, and swiped it through the nearest panel. The light blinked green. The door opened. Inside, the hum of servers filled the air, low, constant, mechanical. The room was cold, lined with glowing towers of data. She moved quickly, slotting in a small drive connected to her earpiece. System breach in progress. A woman's voice said, "Evelyn, Ethan's cybersecurity chief. Stay calm. It'll take 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Elena whispered. Feels like forever, only if someone walks in. Elena's pulse quickened. Every beep of the machine felt like a countdown. Back in the ballroom, Ethan scanned the crowd. His phone buzzed with Evelyn's update. Download at 45%. Keep him busy. He turned and froze. Michael Ridge was walking straight toward him, champagne in hand, smile razor-sharp. Ethan Walker, Michael said smoothly. The man of the hour. Surprised to see you here. Ethan's tone was polite, guarded. I could say the same. Networking, Michael said, eyes gleaming. You know how it is. Everyone wants to look honest once a year. Ethan chuckled. Funny, I was thinking the same thing. Michael tilted his head. You didn't come alone, did you? Ethan didn't blink. I rarely do. Michael's gaze slid past him, toward the corridor Elena had disappeared into. Because I swear I just saw a ghost, he murmured. Ethan stepped closer, voice low. If you're seeing ghosts, Michael, maybe you should ask yourself why they're haunting you. Downstairs, the download hit 97%. Elena glanced toward the door. Footsteps. To guards approaching. Evelyn, hurry. She whispered. 10 seconds, came the reply. Elena pulled the flash drive free just as the door opened. Ma'am, this area's restricted, one guard said. She turned smoothly, smile in place. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was looking for the restroom. Miss, you're not supposed to. Before he could finish, another voice cut in. It's all right, gentlemen, said Michael Ridge. He stepped into the room, mask in hand, blue eyes gleaming. I'll handle this. The guards nodded and left, closing the door behind them. Elena's breath caught. Michael stepped closer, his cologne sharp, familiar, suffocating. I knew it, he said softly. I knew you weren't dead. Disappointed, relieved, actually. I never liked loose ends, she glared. You tried to destroy me, he laughed quietly. No, darling, I saved you. Do you know what would have happened if my father had gone down? You'd be collateral damage. This way, you got to disappear. Live quietly. You should be thanking me. Her voice trembled, fury and pain intertwined. You ruined my life to protect your empire. Michael's smile sharpened. And look at you now, still fighting battles you can't win. You're not built for this world, Elena. Maybe not, she whispered. But I learned how to burn it down. Before he could react, she stepped past him, her heels clicking against the tile. Where are you going? He asked. Upstairs, she said. To remind your father that ghosts don't stay buried forever. In the ballroom, Ethan was cornered by reporters when Elena reappeared, eyes blazing, drive clutched in her hand. She leaned close, whispering, got it. Ethan's smile didn't falter. Then it's time to leave. But before they could move, a sharp voice rang out. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Ridge announced from the stage. A toast to transparency, trust, and the future of Blackridge. Elena's chest tightened. Cameras flashed. Michael stood beside his father, mask gone, face radiant with false charm. Jonathan's voice boomed through the hall. And to those who would seek to tarnish our name, may they find peace wherever they're hiding. The words hung heavy, deliberate. His gaze flicked across the room, landing on her. Ethan's hand brushed hers beneath the tablecloth. Don't react, he whispered. But Elena's pulse was already racing. She felt every stare, every whisper. Her face was still half hidden by the mask, but the Ridges had recognized her. When they finally reached the car, the city air hit like cold fire. Ethan closed the door behind her. We got the data. That's what matters. Elena stared out the window, voice low. He saw me, Ethan, I know. And now he'll come, I know. He started the engine, glancing at her reflection in the glass. But this time, Elena, we'll be ready. She turned to face him. Her mask lay forgotten in her lap, her eyes fierce. They took everything from me once, she said. I want to take everything back. Ethan nodded. Then we end them, outside. Lightning split the sky. And somewhere in the distance, inside the Blackridge Tower, Michael watched their car disappear into the rain, a cruel smile curling at his lips. Let her come, he whispered. This time, I'll bury her for good. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of New York dawn that feels more like a reckoning than a beginning. The storm from the night before had cleared, leaving the streets slick and shining, as if the city itself had been scrubbed clean. For what was coming? In a quiet penthouse overlooking Central Park, Elena Carter stood by the window, staring down at the people below. The flash drive lay on the table beside her coffee, small, silver, unassuming, yet inside it was the truth that could burn empires. Behind her, Ethan Walker paced, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, secure the upload servers. No leaks until I give the signal, he said sharply. And get legal on standby, both ours and the federal liaison. When he hung up, Elena turned. You really think the FBI will take this seriously? They will, he said. They've been circling Blackridge for years, waiting for something concrete. You just handed them a loaded weapon. She smiled faintly. Good. Let's see how it feels when the barrel's pointed their way. Hours later, Walker Capital's private conference room was buzzing. Screens lit up with charts, emails, transaction logs, all decrypted from Blackridge's servers. Evelyn, Ethan's cybersecurity chief, sat at the far end, her fingers flying across the keyboard. These files go back 15 years, she said. Offshore accounts, political donations, bribery trails. They even laundered disaster relief funds meant for Haiti. Ethan looked at Elena. You were right. They used philanthropy as camouflage. Her jaw clenched. They built their empire on stolen compassion. Evelyn's tone hardened. But that's not the most damning part. She pressed a key, and an image filled the screen. A PDF marked confidential. Evidence seizure transfer to 019. This, she said, is your case file, Elena. The SEC never destroyed the original evidence. They hid it. Blackridge paid off the investigators, replaced the official record with a forgery. The real logs prove you were innocent. Elena's breath caught. For a moment, she couldn't speak. 3 years of shame, running, invisibility, all undone by a single document. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. They buried you to save themselves. Now we bury them with their own dirt. By noon, Ethan's media team had gone dark. No calls, no leaks, no chatter. He wanted the hit to land all at once. At exactly 4 p.m. He stood with Elena in front of the massive display wall. Evelyn nodded from her station. Upload ready on all channels, press, federal, and whistleblower networks. Once I hit send, there's no undoing it. Ethan turned to Elena. You sure? Her eyes were steady, calm. They took my name, my career, my future. The least I can take back is the truth. Ethan nodded. Do it. Evelyn hit the key. Within seconds, servers hummed as encrypted packets of data flooded into the digital world. Thousands of files, emails, transaction receipts, and signatures. Then came the explosion. News alerts blinked across screens within minutes. Breaking: Blackridge Investments accused of massive fraud and federal bribery. Evidence reveals cover-up in insider trading case involving former analyst Elena Carter. Whistleblower returns with proof of systemic corruption. Elena stared at the screen, her reflection shimmering in the glass. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. The day her truth would finally speak louder than their lies. But now that it was real, it felt almost too big to hold. Across town, the Ridges were watching too. Jonathan slammed his fist on the table. Who leaked this? Michael's face had gone pale. It's her. It has to be. I thought you said she was finished. I did. Jonathan cut him off with a snarl. Then finish it properly this time, before the feds come knocking. But the knock came sooner than either of them expected. By evening, federal agents were swarming the Blackridge Tower. Laptops seized, servers unplugged. Reporters flooding the streets, and in the chaos, Michael Ridge stood by his office window, watching his father being led away in handcuffs, the empire collapsing in real time. He didn't hear the door open behind him until he felt her presence. Elena. He turned, almost pleading. You don't have to do this. She stepped forward, her voice steady. You already did this. 3 years ago, you ruined everything. He hissed. No, she said softly. You did. I just made sure everyone saw it. He lunged toward her, but two FBI agents intercepted him, forcing him down. Elena didn't flinch. She just looked at him, the man who'd once promised her forever, and felt nothing but the clarity of release. Later that night, the city buzzed with sirens and headlines. Ethan's phone rang non-stop, investors, journalists, government contacts, but he ignored them all. On the balcony, Elena stood alone, the rain soft and cool against her skin. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding. Ethan joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. They'll be rained by morning, he said. The evidence is airtight. She nodded slowly. And me. Your record's being cleared. The SEC issued a formal apology. You'll have your name back by sunrise. Elena smiled faintly. You really think a name can fix everything? No, Ethan said. But it's a start. She turned to look at him, her eyes softer now. Why did you help me, Ethan? He hesitated. Because I saw what they tried to do to you, and I realized I've built a life, surrounded by the same kind of men. Maybe helping you was my way of breaking free too. They stood in silence, the sound of the rain filling the space between them. Then Elena said quietly, Justice doesn't erase the scars. It just makes them visible. Ethan nodded. Then maybe that's what the world needs to see. The scars that built the truth. The next morning, news outlets across America led with her name. Elena Carter cleared of all charges. Black whistleblower exposes financial giants. A new voice for justice. The woman who brought Wall Street to its knees. Elena watched it all from the same diner where she'd once waited tables, sipping black coffee and letting the noise wash over her. When she stood to leave, an older man at the counter caught her hand. Miss Carter, he said softly, my daughter studied finance. She saw your story. She said she finally believes she can make it now. Elena smiled, tears stinging her eyes. Tell her to make it louder than I ever did. That night, she met Ethan at the bridge overlooking the East River. The city shimmered below, bruised, restless, alive. Now what? He asked. She breathed in the cool air, her voice calm. Now, I start again. Not as their victim, as my own name. He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. Whatever you build next, I'd invest. She laughed softly. Careful, Mr. Walker. My advice doesn't come cheap anymore. They stood together in silence, the hum of the city fading beneath the rhythm of the rain, a sound that no longer felt like morning, but renewal. And as thunder rolled faintly in the distance, Elena Carter finally felt what justice was supposed to feel like. Not revenge, not triumph, but peace.